Fourthly, I spoke of the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And here Dr. Wolpert responded to my evidence for the empty tomb, the resurrection appearances, and the origin of the Christian faith by saying that the Gospels were written later and they're not based on eyewitness testimony. I'm afraid that's just misinformed. In the review of John Dominic Crossan's book, The Birth of Christianity, in the Journal of the American Academy of Religion, published in the fall of 2000, the reviewer writes, "The dominant, and in my mind, the likely view is that the Passion narratives are early and based on eyewitness testimony. Specifically, with regard to the empty tomb and the appearances, N.T. Wright, in his epical book, The Resurrection of the Son of God, has concluded that the empty tomb and appearances have a historical probability so high as to be virtually certain, like the death of Augustus in A.D. 14 or the fall of Jerusalem in A.D. 70. Those are the facts. The only real question is, how do you best explain them? And I have never seen a naturalistic explanation of these facts that is as probable or plausible as the resurrection of Jesus. Finally, what about my argument based on the personal experience of God? Here Dr. Wolpert says, well, there are varieties of religious experience. Certainly there are. And I would say that a person is justified in believing in the object of his religious experience unless he has an overriding defeater or reason for thinking that that experience is delusory. The problem is, in tonight's debate, we haven't been given any good reasons for thinking that belief is delusory. So it seems to me I'm perfectly rational to believe in God on the basis of my personal experience of God, unless and until he can give me some good reason for thinking that that experience is delusory. He says, well, what has God done in the last 2,000 years? Well, for one thing, he changed my life. I've had a personal experience of God, and I see no reason to doubt the veridicality of that experience. So the belief in the existence of God, like the belief in the external world or the belief in the reality of the past, is a rational belief to hold unless and until someone provides some sort of overriding objection. So I think so far in tonight's debate, we've not seen any good reasons to think that the belief in God is false. We've seen the genetic fallacy, we've seen red herrings, and other inconclusive arguments. On the other hand, I think we've got 5 good reasons, all of which point to the existence of a transcendent creator and designer of the universe who is the locus of absolute value, who has revealed himself in Jesus of Nazareth, and who can be personally known and experienced.
Lewis?
Well, thank you. First of all, can I deal with the genetic fallacy? The fallacy is yours, not mine. You didn't understand my argument at all. My point about genetics was not in order to explain whether God exists or not, but I was trying to explain why people believed in God. It wasn't evidence for or against the existence of God. You totally misunderstood my argument. My argument against God's existence doesn't depend upon genes. It's the absence of evidence. And to use catchphrases as the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, I mean, that's philosophical bunkum. I mean, I'm terribly sorry. If God exists, you've actually got to find some real evidence. I'm terribly sorry that we scientists do base the way we think on evidence. I mean, if I say that I think that you're a kangaroo because I dreamt you were a kangaroo last night, that is not evidence of the slightest importance. I think you really, if you want to go, you look for evidence, you've got to find evidence. And when I say, what has God done in the last 2,000 years? And his flip reply is, well, he made me religious. I'm terribly sorry. If you really want to take that seriously, you might as well say, well, almost everything you've done has been determined by God, and I'm afraid that isn't evidence. You've really got to find something more plausible that God has done in the last 2,000 years in order to be even in the slightest bit persuasive. With regard to Jesus, I'm slightly out of my depth on the scholarship. The stuff I've read says it's totally unreliable, and there are many books that actually argue that, and I don't find that very useful. There's no reason. If you go to many societies who have a stronger belief in God as Christians do, how would you persuade them that their beliefs are false whereas yours are actually right. And when we go back to the Big Bang, and we want to explain how it occurred, maybe the really true and reliable way to say is, we don't know. You know, there's nothing immoral or unsacred in saying, we just don't know. I mean, I don't think that has really come into many philosophers' minds. We scientists, by contrast, do say sometimes, terribly sorry, we just at the moment don't know and may never know. But rather than say that, I'm afraid believers invent this mythical creature who has no basis, and when I say how is God created, it's denied that he is so amazing, it's a he by the way, in a human form, he's so amazing, he didn't need a creator. The universe needed a creator, yes, but not God. Come on, you can't take that seriously in any way whatsoever. And as far as fine-tuning is concerned, I'm terribly sorry, it may be a very small probability, but that's tough luck. The fact that there is the probability at all is why we're here. That all those constants fit with the actual functioning of the universe, that's the way it is. Yes, it's very improbable. Tough luck. You just have to live with it. Many things in life are very improbable, and you have to live with them. You can't say they don't exist just because you don't like how improbable they are. And once again, when I come back to moral, I've got here moral values certainly can be genetically determined. So I think what one really has to ask also, again and again, is you have to be reminded that all cultures believe in a God of some sort. And yet, and I say you Christians because I think most of you are Christians, believe that your God is the true God, and theirs, of course, is a delusion. I think you really lie in bed at night and be sure, why are you so sure that your God is the true God and was not created by anybody, whereas the universe was, whereas their gods are totally unreliable and really totally deluded. I really cannot see, and I repeat it again and again, if one is to believe in God, one has to first of all go against an enormous amount of what we know about science in the world, that you've got to go into the world of the supernatural, which goes against everything we know about physics and biology, and I'm terribly sorry, I don't see how you can possibly go that way. Thank you very much.
Bill? All right. This is a 7-minute rebuttal of the rebuttal of the rebuttal.
Right. Well, I was rather puzzled by that last remark that in order to believe in God, you must go against modern science and the evidence, since the only scientific evidence we've heard in tonight's debate has been the evidence I've presented in favor of the existence of God. But what about those reasons to believe that belief in God is false? We both agree that it's irrelevant, barring the genetic fallacy, on how belief in God originates. So what about the argument based upon the absence of evidence for God? Well, I said the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. He said, well, that's just a slogan. The point is that in order to justify the belief that God does not exist, you have to have some sort of evidence or justification for that. Otherwise, it's possible that God does exist. Even if all of the arguments for God failed, that wouldn't be evidence that God does not exist. So that in order to provide some sort of justification for atheism, for thinking that belief in God is false, he needs to give some sort of arguments, not just say there's an absence of evidence. And in any case, I have presented the evidence in tonight's debate.